Roll on your way, snowy river, roll on your way, roll on your way until Judgment Day, snowy river, roll.
Since the year 1790, when Watkin Tench wrote, "Famine is approaching with gigantic strides," the new struggling colony of New South Wales groped forward into a harsh, unknown land. Men acutely aware that survival depended on water, of its vital need for conservation and for the unlimited promise of its effective use. In 1845, Strzelecki wrote, "Irrigation becomes the first measure with which the agricultural improvements of Australia must begin." Water power of 1,500 horses can be made available by means of a turbine or horizontal water wheel, reported Frederick Atchison in 1855. If any permanent system of irrigation is adopted in the colony, it must be drawn from snow waters, said Surveyor General Adams in 1885. For over 60 years, men dreamed and planned, investigated and reported. The decade between 1939 and 1949 saw the earlier hopes and aims, the reconciliation of conflicting interests of water versus power, of state versus state, as the three governments concerned joined to evolve a daring, imaginative, dual-purpose project on a scale never before attempted in Australia. A project which was to win world acclaim, the Snowy Mountain Scheme. The scheme comprises two main tunnel systems, the northern diversion, known as the Snowy Tumut Development, and the southern diversion, known as the Snowy Murray Development. The Snowy Tumut Development takes the headwaters of the Murrumbidgee River by tunnel to Lake Yukonbean. From here, the combined waters are diverted inland through a trans-mountain tunnel to Tumut Pond Reservoir. There they join waters diverted from the Toomer River. From Tumut Pond Dam, the combined waters are passed through a succession of 4 power stations in the Tumut Gorge and eventually released to the Murrumbidgee. The Snowy Murray Development captures the waters of the Snowy River at Island Bend, where they are diverted either by tunnel to Lake Yukonbean for storage, or directly westwards through the second trans-mountain tunnel to Gee-High Reservoir on the western face of the mountains. The waters then pass through 2 power stations to the Murray River. Additional water is taken from the Snowy River downstream of the main diversion at Island Bend by a pumping station at Jindabyne, which lifts the water through a tunnel to join the main east-west diversion of the Snowy Murray development. The scheme has involved the construction of some 50 miles of aqueducts, over 90 miles of tunnels, 16 large dams, and 7 power stations. Hundreds of miles of transmission lines interconnect the power stations to the supply systems of New South Wales and Victoria. At Adaminaby, the Governor-General, W.J. McKell, fired the first shot to mark the official commencement of work in the area. In attendance, Prime Minister Ben Chifley and Snowy Commissioner William Hudson. William Hudson faced an enormous challenge. He required a workforce to build dams, drive tunnels, and erect power stations. Access roads were to be driven into some of the most rugged terrain in the country for the locations of the working sites. Nature had made this part of the continent a place of beauty and a winter playground for thousands of tourists. It also provided many hazards in its virgin outposts, these to be penetrated by the authorities' construction forces. Forces that would harness water from the vast Snowy Mountains area of 2,000 square miles. Water in its passage which would fall 2,600 feet through shafts, tunnels and power stations to generate electricity for New South Wales and Victoria and augment supplies of water to the Murray and Murrumbidgee valleys. With Australia experiencing an acute labour shortage in 1949, the government began recruiting many migrants from overseas. Tradesmen were needed urgently. Bricklayers, carpenters, fitters, turners, mechanics, scientific workers, and many others. At Cooma North, the authority had started to build the township, which would be the base for operations, and to house the families who were to make this their home for many years. In the peak year of 1959, over 7,000 people worked on the scheme. Language difficulties were a problem, and the authority embarked on an educational and language teaching program. Soon, investigation teams began to move into the regions. For the early survey and drilling crews, a pioneering spirit was required. Diamond drillers were always to be found in the remotest places, probing for information on rock formation for tunnel lines, dam sites and power stations. Hydrographers were measuring water potential from streams and rivers. Vital information which was soon on the drawing boards at head office in Cooma. In the scientific laboratories, geological details were studied, materials tested, and hydraulic models built to scale to assist in the design of projects. In 1950, investigation teams moved into the Tiamat 1 area and work commenced on the exploratory tunnel for the Tiamat 1 underground power station.
Don't bring your sweetheart and don't bring your wife, for here you must follow the bachelor's life, where woman is woman and man is a fool. You'll get much more work from a bow-legged mule. Roll, roll, roll on your way.
Meanwhile, at Island Bend, the work centre was constructed, this being the base for the first of the Snowy Murray projects.
Sometimes it's raining and sometimes it's hail, and sometimes it blows up a blizzardly gale. Sometimes it's fire and sometimes it's flood, and sometimes you're up to your eyeballs in mud. Roll, roll.
Living conditions were bleak in the severe winter of 1951, and extreme boggy conditions made progress difficult.
Until Judgment Day, Snowy River roll.
But soon, the road to Guthaga gradually took shape, and the camp at Munyang constructed. This was the base for the Norwegian contractor who had won the first major contract on the scheme to build the Guthaga project. Work on the dam foundations commenced, and the dam constructed. 3 miles downstream at the power station site, Mr. Selmer, Sir William McKell, and an elated William Hudson watched progress. The project was officially opened in April 1955 by Prime Minister Robert Menzies. (1956) was the year of great activity on the scheme. The contract had been awarded to an American group to build the Adaminaby Dam, now Yukonbean Dam, one of the world's largest earth and rock-filled dams, and when completed would be the heart of the scheme from which water could be diverted either to the Murray or Murrumbidgee systems. 1957, Sir Arthur Fadden pulled a switch to close the diversion gate. As water began to back up in the valley behind the dam wall, residents from the old town of Adaminaby, 6 miles away, were being moved to a new situation at a higher elevation. Particular attention was given to older citizens, and procedures of removal were explained and difficulties overcome. Removal of the bank building created an unusual sight as it moved through the main street. And there's always some nostalgia as people leave places where they have resided for a lifetime. At Tumut Pond, contractors were preparing the site to commence building the dam. The hitherto peaceful surroundings of the Tumut Valley were resounding to the barrage of construction activity. (1956) was also the year in which the authority had its first royal visitor. The Duke of Edinburgh placed the first skip of concrete into Tumut Pond Dam. The contractors were making fast progress in driving the Yukonbean-Tumut Tunnel. World records for tunnelling were being toppled here. At the peak of progress, 474 feet was recorded in one working week. In 1958, the authority acquired a Beaver aircraft, enabling supplies, mail, personnel and equipment to be transported to outlying areas. This proved a good means of access to camps and townships isolated by bad road conditions. Over Cabramurra, the regional centre for the Tumut projects, the Beaver comes into the nearby airstrip recently cleared of snow. Workers of many nationalities were eager for news from home. The authority subsequently used 6 aircraft which, during the course of the scheme, carried 193,000 passengers on 59,000 flights and transported over 4,000 tons of freight. (1958) saw the completion of Yukonbean Dam, impounding water over an area of 56 square miles. Tumut Pond Dam, too, was completed in 1958. This 280 feet high concrete arch structure would impound water diverted from Yukonbean and create the head necessary to drive the turbines of Tumut 1 and 2 underground stations. The dam was officially opened in September of that year when Prime Minister Menzies closed a gate and storage commenced. Winter conditions in the regions created many difficulties, and authority road clearing teams were constantly on the job to keep the roads to construction sites open. These snow clearing operations were vital, as new working centres were frequently being established. Homes to house workers and their families were usually transported by low loaders. Cabramurra became the home for many new residents who were to work on the Upper Tumut projects. It was a strange new world for the young folk. In areas where roads were impassable, the snowcats were a valuable acquisition to the transport system. Early in 1959, placing of concrete proceeded in the dam at Tantangra. This site, near the headwaters of the Murrumbidgee River, would divert water through a 10-mile-long tunnel to Lake Yukonbean. Tantangra Dam was completed in 1960. Large electrical and mechanical components were now being transported by the authorities' Antar road train to the underground station at Tumut 1. The steep country and sharp turns made it a slow operation. By October 1959, all units of the station were operational when the project was opened by Dame Patty Menzies. Together with the Upper Tumut switching station, this virtually completed the first phase of the Upper Tumut works. Cables for transmitting the power from the underground stations were connected to the towers at the top of the mountain. Nerves of steel were required and daredevil tactics often used. This was the year in which tunnelling records were being shattered by an Australian contractor who achieved a maximum advance of 525 feet in one working week when driving the Tumut Tunnel, which conveys water to Tumut Pond. During this period, the authority carried out a large program of soil conservation, and with the spraying of superphosphate around Yukonbean Dam, spectacular flying could be witnessed. The opening of Tumut 2 underground power station in 1962 brought all work on the Upper Tumut projects to completion. This station, together with Tumut 1, produces over 500,000 kilowatts of power. Contracts were now let for the first stages of the snowy Murray diversion. These included the Island Bend G-High Tunnel, G-High Dam, Murray 1 Pressure Tunnel, Murray 1 and 2 power stations, and the pipeline contracts. 1963 was a royal year when Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and the Duke of Edinburgh visited the scheme. The royal party entered the snowy G-High Tunnel during its construction. Showing keen interest, Her Majesty proceeded to the tunnel face. At Island Bend, the royal party attended the Sunday service at the small mountain church. The dam here was well underway. When completed, it underwent spillway tests. Sir Eric Woodward unveiled a plaque at Jindabyne in 1964 to commemorate the new town recently completed. And the old bridge was demolished before rising waters completely inundated the old town of Jindabyne. The lower Tumut projects were now underway, and large earth-moving equipment moved in to commence the main embankment for the Blowering Dam. (1964) was also the year in which some of the heaviest snowfalls were recorded in the snowy mountains. Cabramatta was under a thick blanket, creating transport difficulties. This is the school at Cabramatta, and the children think it's fine. Roads linking project sites had to be constantly cleared of snow. And the Wombat seems a little wary of the snowplough. It was in conditions like these that outposts such as Spencer's Creek would be isolated as roads became impassable. Aircraft were needed in such circumstances to drop supplies. Here, in this picturesque part of the western slopes, the Gee-High Aqueduct was under construction, and the mile-long tunnel forming part of it had been completed. Concrete pipes brought by road from Wodonga, 130 miles away, were being positioned. In November 1964, an official party led by Sir William Hudson entered the snowy Gee-High Tunnel to fire the last shot and break through this 9-mile section of the Trans-Mountain Tunnel. And obviously the charge was well loaded for this one. The road through to the Murray Power Station sites had opened up magnificent views of the range. Gee-High Dam was in the final stages of completion. And the Glory Hole Spillway. The road winding its way to the top of the pipeline bench at Murray 1 became the scene of much activity as the steel pipes were conveyed from the contractor's factory at Corryong, 30 miles away. They were then jacked into line, lowered to their positions on the bench, and welded together both internally and externally. Below, at the power station, work proceeded as heavy mechanical and electrical components were installed. This was the year in which the Queen Mother paid a visit to the scheme. She is seen after inspecting Murray 1 station. In February 1969, Councillor Leo Barry, OBE, opened the Jindabyne pumping station. This system pumps water from the catchment at Jindabyne to the G-High storage. Commissioner Howard Dan unveiled a plaque in commemoration of workers on the Snowy scheme. Water was then released back from the G-High tunnel, providing a spectacular sight for spectators. The Murray 2 pipeline now neared completion as steel pipes were positioned. With Murray 2 dam complete and the spillway tested, the project was opened in October 1969 by National Development Minister David Fairbairn. Water had now flooded the Cancoban Valley adjacent to the Murray projects, creating picturesque waterways. Wildlife, disturbed by sudden happenings, were finding new resting places. Releases of water from Cancoban are made through these large spillway gates, which control the flow to the Murray River. September 1968. Blowering Dam on the lower Tumut had been completed and released its first irrigation water. Junima Dam had also been completed and brought into service the same year. This scene was taken during the testing of the floodgates. The Talbingo project was now well underway. Contractors are shown removing large quantities of earth to form the headrace channel. At the dam, placement and rolling of material into the impervious core continued. In September 1970, the Talbingo Dam had risen to its full height of 530 feet. The Tumut 3 power station neared completion as large mechanical and electrical components were installed. In June 1972, Tumut 3 commenced to generate electricity, thus bringing into service the last stage of the Snowy Tumut development and the final project of the scheme. In October 1972, the Tumut 3 power station was officially opened by the Governor-General, His Excellency, the Right Honourable Sir Paul Hasluck. This ceremony virtually marked the completion of the Snowy scheme. A scheme which has augmented power supplies to cities and supplied additional water to irrigate thirsty lands. A truly national scheme which has been described as one of the world's greatest engineering achievements.